Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with life coach Monique Scott. This is your daily dose of happy, and we are so happy you decided to join us today. And Monique, hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying in. I don't know what your weather is like up here in the Northeast. It's wet, it's cold, it's not really nice at all. So this is a good day to be inside.
Ooh. Oh, it sounds like it's a Netflix day there.
A Netflix day. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. So, we'll just do our Netflix thing here. We do our own version of Netflix, of course. We don't quite do it the way Netflix does it. We just, we have our own content that we create. But,
right.
It's good. It's all good. And this has been quite a week because this is the third show you're doing with me this week. Now, you are probably the closest to anyone of my co-hosts to understanding what it's like for me to do 5 shows a week. So
yes.
My question for you is, what do you think of it?
No.
Not for you.
This is not cut out for me. And, this is really good because I think I would be a podcast cheater, right?
A cheater? Oh, okay.
Yes. So I would probably do what John Lee Dumas, I don't know if he still does it, but, I would batch all of my content on one day and then just disseminate it out each day. I would not be doing it live every single day.
Okay. Well, that just goes to show everybody has different preferences because I love this. I enjoy doing this 5 days a week, and that doesn't mean you have to enjoy what I enjoy. Thank goodness we enjoy different things. That makes our lives different and is interesting. And, that's where the contrast and polarity comes from. It's good stuff.
Yes. And see, I think we talked about this maybe yesterday. Coaching would not be your thing, right?
Not really. No. Yeah. We talked about it afterward I've tried it. I mean, I've actually, and I could see myself doing it under certain circumstances, but I don't want to do it for a living. I mean, if I had to do more than 1 or 2 clients a week, it would be too much. And if you're going to do it, you have to do more than 1 or 2 clients a week. That's just not going to cut the mustard,
Right. It's not.
So you got to really love it. You got to enjoy it. Which is kind of ironic because my wife used to be a psychotherapist. So she used to see, 30, 40 clients in a week and was used to doing that. Yeah.
Wow.
But by the same token, after 10 years of it, she quit. She couldn't take anymore. So
that's quite a while to be seeing that many clients or a bunch of clients every single week. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's mentally draining.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Well, she was working for one of these family service outfits. So, it's basically, it's like the McDonald's of therapy. I mean, they just keep feeding them through. Yeah. So, yeah, it'll wear you out. No doubt about that.
Yeah. So see, that's why you're podcasting and I'm coaching.
That's it.
Coaching I could do. Well, I do every day, but
every day. Yeah.
Podcasting, no, I'm glad I'm only on like once or sometimes maybe twice a week. That's plenty for me, but it has been fun this week because it's been something different every single day I've been on. So
that's true. And also you got one of your questions answered on Monday because you wanted to get a different perspective on astral projection, which you got from Louie and Amy. So,
yes.
Yeah. So you also got a little benefit there too.
Yeah.
So that was good stuff. So anyway, we were talking at the end of the show yesterday, and I don't even remember how it came up, but you drew a line of similarity between Elon Musk and Nikola Tesla. And I wanted to, do you remember what brought that on or why you thought of that connection?
I think we were just talking about the creative mind. Remember we were talking about the children inside the school, right?
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And how it doesn't seem to be any boundaries on their creativity. So they get a chance to kind of explore almost any and everything that comes to mind. And so that got me to thinking about some of the people that I consider my kind of heroes, I guess, if you will, and Nikola Tesla being one of them. And I thought, well, I kind of consider Elon Musk as kind of like the modern day Nikola Tesla almost, I guess, sort of, right? And so that's how we got into talking about it because I think Tesla and, well, now Elon, Steve Jobs, and Einstein are probably my top 4. So if you ever have to, when I go back to Fort Lauderdale, I've been looking for poster size black and white photos that I like of all 4 men to put in my apartment just because they're so inspirational to me. I think they really embody what we're able to do with our minds as human beings, and really how God created us to use our minds, not just for the status quo, going to work every day, coming home, doing the same thing over and over for 75 years and calling it a life, as Robin Sharma said, right? But really utilizing our creative abilities to serve mankind in a greater way, which all four men did. They completely changed the world, and Elon is continuing to change the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, because the context, of course, is this is a law of attraction show, and anybody who studies how the law of attraction works and how to apply it in your own life is somebody I put into the category of a conscious creator. Conscious creation, of course, being using your mind to create. So you identified four men who were clearly experts at creating with their minds. They produced some amazing results, to say the least. Right. And there are actually lessons among each of them, too, because like everybody else, we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
The first one that comes to my mind is Steve Jobs. And I was an admirer of his pretty much from a very young age for both of us, because, I mean, he wasn't all that much older than I am.
Right.
And he was a wonderful creator, and he also destroyed himself at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, he really did. He just burned himself out to a husk of who he originally was, because he was so driven with what he was doing. So it's almost like it's got a bit of a warning tag in it, like, be a conscious creator, but be careful how you use it. This is a dangerous tool.
The mind really can be, right? If you use it for good or evil, right?
Yeah. And I always like to redefine that, because I think the good and evil thing gets to be a little bit, well, it's very moralistic, obviously, and it can be a little bit of a minefield, so to speak, trying to work your way through it, because you can trip yourself up pretty good trying to distinguish, well, how do I use good and evil and so forth. So I turn it into prefer and don't prefer.
Right.
What are the things I prefer? We did. Yeah. So when I rephrase it, I would say he got caught up in doing stuff that he didn't prefer and ended up creating part of a life that he was constantly fighting with. And his life was a struggle, and a great portion of it was self-created. And you didn't have to know law of attraction to see it. It was very obvious that he was creating a lot of unnecessary struggle for himself. Well, I say unnecessary. Maybe it was necessary for him. But let's just say we know that illness comes originally from the thought process. It originates in the mind. Sadly, he died of pancreatic cancer. So we know that illness got created in his mind. Now, I'm not blaming him. I mean, illness, first of all, is pervasive. Second of all, we all make mistakes. We're all learning and so forth. I'm just simply observing. He kind of put himself into a corner at the same time that he was changing the world. I mean, he created these smartphones. He created, the iPod. He created the Mac. He didn't do it himself. He had some really strong people, including his original partner, partners actually. But I mean, he was the guiding energy behind so much of this great change. So, like with most of these famous men and women, by the way, it also applies to the famous women. Mm-hmm. It's a dichotomy. You get both. You get the genius and you get the baggage. It goes hand in hand.
Right. I completely agree. And it's just amazing to me, the products that Steve was able to create. I mean, I remember when the iPhone came. Oh gosh, I feel so old. When the iPhone actually came out, right? It was so revolutionary. And it's so funny. I mean, just to even think, we used to have, was that the iPod? Was that the iPod?
The iPod came before the iPhone, yeah.
When you had the little thing and you stored all your music on it, right?
That was the iPod, right? Which, by the way, is the origin of podcasts. So LOA Today, in a sense, originated with the iPod.
Hey, well, there you go.
Yeah.
But think about how innovative that was. And then to take the iPod and put the music on the phone. Mm-hmm. And now we actually watch TV on the phone. I mean, it's amazing how far technology has come in such a short amount of time. But it's people like Steve Jobs who were forward thinking and they could see things into the future before we could. And people probably tell them, oh, that's crazy, right? But it
Well,
wasn't.
when I was a kid, I mean, I wasn't much into comic books, but I knew other kids who were. And one of those comic book characters was Dick Tracy with his TV watch. Well,
Really?
yeah.
I don't know. I remember Dick Tracy, but I
Yeah.
never watched like.
Well, that's how he would communicate to headquarters. He had this watch. It had a little tiny TV screen on it, and he could talk into the watch, and he could look at the guy in headquarters and so forth. Yeah.
How cool. Now, I can research that now.
But at the time that, that we saw that, those who were my age, and of course we were all kids, we thought that was pretty cool. The adults thought that was just a bunch of nonsense.
Right.
No, that wasn't going to happen. Well, guess what?
It happened.
And it wasn't limited to what those watches were. The watches were limited to, communicating with headquarters. With the iPhone and the Android phones, we can communicate with anybody anywhere around the world at any time.
Yeah. It's amazing, right?
It is amazing. It's fabulous. It's really exciting stuff. And it's happened pretty quickly, pretty darn quickly.
Yeah. And it's continuing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So many advances in technology is going on today. Man.
Louise and I were watching a series that I think was created, may have been created by Netflix, mentioning Netflix earlier, but I'm not 100% sure who created it. The series, I think, was called Breakthroughs, and it's literally a series of shows that they show you going back deep into history, how events over time led to, say, the creation of the car or of the smartphone, or, they just piece together all the different steps in how this stuff was put together. And it's really fascinating to watch how all this stuff originated, and how the thought processes of people evolved over time. So it feeds a more advanced concept of conscious creation, because we usually talk about conscious creation in terms of let's create something in our own lives, right?
Right.
But there's also the other aspect of it, which is where one person contributes, and then the next person contributes, and then the next person, and the next person, and the next person over the millennia. And then finally it evolves into something that was related to what that first person had in mind, but becomes much more specific, much more real. It uses ideas and technologies that the first person didn't have a clue about how that would possibly work.
Right.
But it was the group effort over time. It wasn't a group of people who knew each other, because obviously they lived in different segments of time, but it was a group of people who over time created this continuous stream of creation, leading to things like smartphones.
Yeah.
Now that part to me it's not more fascinating. It's as fascinating as being a conscious creator trying to attract a relationship or a house or a career or something like that. That's also pretty cool. But this is cool too, because it's showing the interconnectedness. We are all interconnected, as source energy. I mean, that shows how the practical aspect of that works within the real world. That's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, really. And just, a caveat of that, of us all being connected with source energy, is he may give me, or there may be, let me put it that way, there may be an idea for something in the vortex, right, in the field. Mm-hmm. I have it and you have it, but I don't act on it and you do. And then I think, oh my gosh, they stole my idea.
That's right.
I think I shared this with you before, maybe not. But about 6 months before Snapchat actually came out.
Really?
I had that same idea.
Same one, yeah.
I'll never forget the day. I was sitting in the parking lot of my daughter's high school, waiting to pick her up after band practice. And I just started, don't judge me, okay?
I promise.
I just started I was thinking about all these different emotions, right? Happiness, sadness, being upset or whatever. And I just started taking pictures of myself with these different funny faces, right? And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could send this to someone and they could see it consecutively, right, one after the other. I know I'm not explaining it right, but when Snapchat first came out, that's all it was. You could see it. It would stay, the photo or whatever would stay for, I want to say 24 hours, but I
probably
I don't even know if it was that long. Yeah,
Hmm.
maybe 24 hours. And then it would go away and you would never be able to see it again.
Right.
And that's what I was thinking. What if I could just send this to them, right? And 6 months later, doggone it, Snapchat came out. But let me tell you, Walt,
Hmm.
the excuse I made that I'll never make this mistake again. The excuse I made was I don't know anybody who does
Hmm.
computer science. I don't know anything about computers or social media. I don't know how to create an app. I had like a ton. You name an excuse, that was one of them, right? And I sat on it, but it was in the field, right? It was in the
Hmm.
field, it was in the vortex. And so they said, hey, what if we could take pictures, right? And they ran with it.
Hmm.
Whether they knew how to do it or they found someone to do it, the point is they took the idea and ran with it. And I think that that happens more often than not
Oh,
for a lot
sure.
of people. We have ideas and we don't do anything with them. But just because you don't do anything with them doesn't mean that the universe isn't going to have it done, right?
Well,
It just means you won't be the one to do it.
that's right. Well, it's a key aspect of the idea of what we call source energy. That
Hmm.
the source energy, the energy that is the energy that creates everything. It's created
Right.
worlds, it creates everything in our lives, and so on and so forth. We are a part of it. We are source energy. That's the material of which we are made. That
Absolutely.
source energy is all interconnected. And that interconnectedness, I'm convinced, now we're getting into a belief system here for sure, but that interconnectedness is what you are tapping into when you're getting that
Yeah.
idea. And when that other person is getting the idea at the same time, that's why these ideas all pop up at the same time. We're all interconnected
Right.
in that way.
Right.
And
I
sure,
completely
one
agree.
person gets on board, the other person doesn't do anything with it, but we all benefit from it anyway.
Hmm.
I mean, you didn't end up actually creating Snapchat and you didn't become a millionaire as a result of it, but you still got the benefit of Snapchat.
Right.
You still got
Right.
it. So you didn't lose anything.
No, no. Few million. I mean, but who's counting, right?
Well, apparently you are. Okay, I'm not supposed to tell. I'm sorry.
But yeah, but I also, and this might be a little controversial too, but I also think what's for you is for you,
Hmm.
right? So
What do you mean by that?
I also think it was meant for them to do it and not for me to do it. And the reason why I say that is I would have needed to evolve into the person who could be responsible to build a company to take it as far as they've taken Snapchat, or who knows, if I had actually implemented it and built it, maybe it would have gone in a different direction than Snapchat has gone today, but it stays the same. My premise stays the same.
Hmm.
You have to grow into the person who is going to be able to take that radical responsibility in order to see that thing through. I say all the time, I was just telling a friend, I was like, if you think that Oprah today, the billionaire Oprah, is the same Oprah, 20, 30 years ago, who was a co-anchor and asking her boss for more money simply because she felt like she should be getting the same amount of pay as her co-host because she's a woman and he was a man, right? And so I told her, I said, you have to grow into the person that you need to become in order to carry out those things. So again, back to my point, it was meant for them. Maybe it was meant for them and not me because I was not ready then. I had the idea, but I didn't take it as far as it needed to go. I didn't even run with it because I wasn't the person I needed to be in order to make it happen. Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I don't think of it in terms of it wasn't meant for you. I think of it in terms of you just weren't ready for it.
And that's why I think
I
it
agree with
doesn't
that part. I
change
think that
because
part
I
really
was
makes a lot of
not ready.
sense. Yeah, exactly. Because if you're not ready for it, you're not ready for it.
No, no. But had I been ready, I would have ran with it, right?
Sure. I mean, wouldn't have been anything to hold you back at that point, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't anything to hold me back then except my mind coming up with all these excuses, self-sabotaging, right? Self-sabotaging. making excuses as for why it couldn't be done. But it can always be done. You just have to find a way to do it.
I wonder if we should be thinking about it a little bit differently, because we all talk about it, putting up those blocks, bringing down the blocks. How do we let go of things? This is like a constant topic of conversation in the various groups on Facebook. Once again, today we are live streaming to the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group, but not just that group, all the groups online on Facebook. It's a topic of conversation here on the show. Lots of people have written about it, but I wonder if we're thinking about it in a way that is productive and helpful to us. I think it is largely for many people in many circumstances, but sometimes I wonder if by thinking about it in terms of these blocks and I'm not ready for it and all that kind of stuff, we are inadvertently putting up blocks just by thinking about stuff in terms of blocks, that we're basically blocking ourselves by saying, I wonder what's blocking me.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that, but I can definitely tell you back then, I wasn't thinking, what's blocking me. I know what was blocking me. I just didn't think I could do it. That really is what it came down to, honestly, Walt.
Sure.
If I thought I could do it, I would have found a way to do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's a given.
Subconsciously, I didn't.
Once we believe, there's nothing holding us back.
Yeah.
That's the radical belief you're talking about. It's a belief that is so strong that it's unquestionable.
Exactly. That's the perfect word, unquestionable. Right.
Yeah. And when it's unquestionable, what's going to stop you? The only thing that can stop you is you anyway. And at that point, if it's unquestionable, then there's nothing stopping you because you don't doubt it for a second. Right.
Either you'll find a way or you'll make a way. Period.
Yeah, something will happen. Something changes. Yeah. Something shifts. So
yeah.
That's probably the most challenging thing from my perspective of learning how law of attraction works, how to apply it in my life and so forth. It has been all along. I've learned a lot by talking with people like you about how to let go of stuff like that, but it continues to be a challenge. And I think the challenge is probably fairly universal. I think a lot of people, probably all people, deal with it to one extent or another. The thing that I was kind of touching on, though, when I said I wonder if we create the block for ourselves is we're really good at blocking ourselves. We're really good at putting limits on our thinking because that's what a block is. A block is a limit, right?
Right.
I can do this, or the world can do this, but I can't do that. My friend can do this, but he can't do that. I can do this, but I can't do that. It's setting a limit, saying we can't go anything further than that. And yet we know plenty of stories about humans who were told they couldn't do something and they ended up doing it anyway.
Right.
The one that we've probably quoted, 150 times here on the show is when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. Up until that point, it was impossible. Everybody believed, it's not possible to do, except for Roger Bannister. He didn't believe it, and he broke the record. That's what we do. We set these limits for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the challenge, I guess, really becomes stretching the imagination.
I'm going to challenge you on that. You know what I think it really is now that I'm giving more thought to it during this conversation.
All right.
I honestly think, Walt, we don't know who we are.
What do you mean?
We do not know who we were created to be as spiritual beings. We are so used to the constructs of this physical world that we see every day that we think that that's what it is. So I believe if we really understood who we are created as spiritual human beings, the power of our minds, our ability to change our reality, then we would not have these limits because we would understand that we do not have any limits. But we don't. Why? Because we do live in this physical world. We do see physical things. And either in our own lives or other people's lives, we've seen things repeatedly that don't work out or that don't happen for us, right? Or you try something and it doesn't work. So you think, oh, well, if I try something else, that's not going to work either, right? Mm-hmm. So then it becomes kind of like a program. We start programming ourselves to limit ourselves. And then you have negative reinforcements from other people who may also come along and tell you that you can't do it. Right? Mm-hmm. And so we fall into this habit of only seeing ourselves from a very limited viewpoint, right? Thinking that we have limits, when in all actuality, and I'm going to go off the rails just a little bit here, right?
That's all right. We're used to that around here.
Love this show. Right? So if we think about ourselves the way that Neville Goddard thinks about or thought about man, right? Okay. He believed that Jesus Christ was our own wonderful human imagination. And I could understand where he was coming from. At first I didn't, but I got it, right? If we create all things from our imagination, God and Jesus are one, right? And any other ascended masters you want to put in there. If we're all one with God, if we're all just one spirit, right? Interconnected with God, if he can do all things, then so can we. I think that we have not been educated to believe that we are one with God and that we can do the exact same things. I often think about what Jesus said in the Bible when he, they were so fascinated with the fact that he could walk on water. And he was like, these miracles that I'm doing, they're like nothing. Like, what are you talking about? You can do this too. And even greater things than I'm doing that you can do. Well, people hear that and they read that, but I don't think that a lot of people really take that into the context of what Jesus really said. I mean, I think they heard, but they weren't listening, right?
Or they don't believe it. They just flat out don't believe it.
But why don't they believe it?
Well, because they weren't able to do it. They weren't able to do it up until that point, just as Roger Bannister and anybody else wasn't able to run 4 minutes. So of course it couldn't be done.
But here's my thing. If the master himself, the one who has done it, is telling you also that you can do it, and you follow him and you believe his words, why wouldn't it be true? If God cannot lie, why would that not be true?
There's an interesting side piece to this, and it's along this line, that when people are faced with circumstances of questioning and doubting and not really being confident, not really being sure, one of the things that they do is they test. They kind of test to see, does it work? And they test it mentally most often, but they also test it through repetition, really. So for person A, it could be just hearing that somebody else can do it makes them believe, well, I can do it too.
Right.
But for person... That would be you. Okay. But for person B, it could be, well, they got to try it and they got to experience it once themselves before they can believe that it'll actually happen. And for person C, maybe they got to experience it 10 times before they can believe it. They just have such a high standard of doubt, so to speak, that they have to have a lot of exposures before they finally realize, okay, yep, I guess this is a real deal. And it's going to be different for every person, how many different iterations they have to go through an experience. And
that's coming back exactly to my point.
Yeah.
If you really knew who you are as a creative being, as a spiritual being, you would have no doubt. Period. There would not be any room for any doubt because you know self, right? Because you know it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. It's an odd thing that we all have these different levels of doubt, that we all have these different levels of limiting our beliefs, but it's undeniable. I mean, the evidence is clear. All you have to do is look at your fellow human beings and then look at yourself and say, yep, there it is. No doubt about it. Right. That's the only thing I don't doubt, is that I don't doubt there's plenty of doubt.
Right.
Now, of course, as conscious creators, we want to learn to get past that. That's why we bring all this stuff up about, well, how do I let go of all this thing and so forth. And it leads to many ways of discussing that. But one thing that I wanted to bring up and ask you about, I've been doing a lot more with affirmations lately than I'd ever done before.
Okay.
In the past, I'd always kind of dismissed them like, they aren't really for me. Didn't really work until the day came about 3 years ago when I started trying mirror work, and that really worked for me, the mirror exercises. And mirror exercises are basically affirmations said into a mirror. So now all of a sudden I have to take affirmations more seriously.
Because you're talking to yourself and you see yourself talking to yourself.
That's right. So I've made I've made various attempts to incorporate them into my daily routine. The usual methods that people use, whether, speaking to themselves or writing in a journal or whatever, didn't really do it for me too much other than the mirror work. Mm-hmm. But I've had success with creating videos or creating audio files that I can replay, like talking to myself through the audio file, and then using that. I
definitely have my clients to do that.
Yeah, and then using that as a way to basically give myself the reprogramming that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, we've seen lots of people talk about and complain about the idea that they don't have how do I say it? They complain about the affirmations not working for them. Let's put it that way. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they've been doing them for days at a time or weeks at a time. It's just not doing anything. It doesn't work. This stuff doesn't really work. And as with any of these tools that we talk about, when I hear somebody trying a tool and it doesn't work, well, the first thing I think is not every tool is for everybody. But the second thing I think is, why didn't it work for them? Not because I want to solve their issue or something like that, but just because I want to understand, where are the limits? Why does it work in this case and not in that case? And I kind of stumbled on the idea that a lot of it has to do with the feeling that we put into it. It made me wonder, if you have one person who's, maybe they have one affirmation they repeat to themselves. That's what people most often seem to do. They have one that they like and they just keep repeating it. I get bored when I do that. So I have like a whole list of them. But, whatever floats your boat is whatever floats your boat. But if you're just repeating it to yourself, saying, let's see, I did a little survey. I asked what were people's favorite affirmations. I did this through a number of Facebook groups, and the winner by far was everything's working out for me. That's the one that most people reported as being their favorite.
Okay.
So imagine if you're saying, everything's working out for me. 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 And then compare it to, everything's working out for me. Everything's working out for me. Really exaggerating. Oh, everything's working out for me. It's a different feeling. The first one has no feeling at all. The second one is loaded with feeling. And you can actually pretty quickly get into that feeling state just by overacting, essentially, just by being overly dramatic about it.
Yeah.
And I've really been noticing it the last couple of days. I created, by the way, anyone who's interested, you can see my latest experiment on the YouTube channel, where I've uploaded a 16-minute video of affirmations that I've read into the camera. Cool. But I've been repeating them for myself every day for the last few days. And this morning, I decided to really over-exaggerate, to do the overacting as I was reading them. And what amazed me is how fast I got into the feeling by doing that. Mm-hmm. If I do it the more normal way, I could go through the full 16 minutes and achieve a little bit of feeling.
Right.
But when I really over-exaggerate it, I'm there in about 3 seconds.
That's the key, Walt. That's the key. I don't think people who recommend that people listen to or recite affirmations or even write affirmations, I think that that's the key element that they oftentimes leave out.
Yeah.
It's definitely when you put emotion and feeling into the affirmations, that's what helps you to reprogram your subconscious mind to believe that what you're saying is true for you, right? So for me, what I did was I went on Fiverr and I found a guy and I wrote out 100 different affirmations, from everything to love relationship, to self-love, to money, to my business, to finance, to health, right? And my very favorite ones, because I have a bunch, but these were my favorite ones, come up to 100, right? I sent it to the guy on Fiverr and I had him to loop it and put it in double induction for an hour.
Ah, okay.
And I had some music, soft music that I gave to him as well that he created for me. Mm-hmm. And so now I listen to that when I'm going to sleep at night. And that's what I wanted. I wanted it, I wanted it soft so that it starts to get into my subconscious mind as I'm falling asleep. Mm-hmm. But to your point, as I am falling asleep, whatever it is that I hear, I'm repeating it in my mind with emotion. So it's not just me listening to, I am America's favorite manifestation and mindset coach. In my mind, I repeat it, I am America's favorite manifestation and mindset coach, right? that way.
Exactly.
I think that's what's missing, the emotionalizing of the affirmations.
It does make sense. I mean, Neville
Yeah.
Goddard, you mentioned him earlier. That was his big thing, was you had to feel it. His one
Feeling
phrase
is a
that feeling was a secret. Feeling is a secret. That was his book. And the one
Yep.
that Cindy and I used to repeat over and over again is assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That was our
Yes.
catchphrase.
Love it.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. The challenging part is remembering to do it, because we tend to think of affirmations as something that you say, and most of us don't say things dramatically. Most of us, we're carrying on our conversations like this and saying stuff like that. We don't really put any feeling into it, other than when we're having a conversation with somebody, it's the feeling of, oh, can you believe that somebody did that? No, I can't believe that this is going on. I mean, it's really pissing me off. That's the kind of feeling we put into most stuff, right?
Right. But I love what Tony Robbins does. I love his incantations too, getting the whole body moving when you're saying your affirmations, but of course, incantations, so that you really feel it like you're over exaggerating it as you say it. But for Tony, you're actually putting your body to movement, right? Which I think is also really, really great. That's a great way to kind of get your mind and body connected and on the same vibration as what it is that you are saying or thinking, right? I think that's really powerful. In the last week or so, I've really been working on incantations, right? I mostly do it when I'm walking to and from the gym because I'm outside. I don't want anybody to look at me and think I'm crazy. So it's like early morning, nobody's in the parking lot, right?
Yep.
But, I'm jumping up and down, or, I'm raising my fist in the air like, yeah, while I'm saying it. So I like doing that because it does start my day. It feels different, right? It feels different. So to your point, if you put some emotion behind it, absolutely you start to change, like you said, in just a few seconds.
Yeah,
right?
it's quick.
Maybe I feel it, maybe I don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's quick and it's dramatic. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I try to dramatize it now, to really exaggerate it as far as way, way beyond what would feel normal. I mean, way beyond the way I would talk to somebody else. And like you, I do it in private. I don't do it in public. I corner up in my little office. I close the door. If I can't close the door, I'm mouthing it very quietly so that nobody can hear it. I mean,
right.
The other thing that I think is really valuable is the mirror exercise when you tie it in. Mm-hmm. So like with the 16 minutes of affirmations video that I put together. Yeah, I made it as a video. The background of the video is just stars in the night sky, and I have the text superimposed on them for every line that I'm saying.
Okay, cool.
But I don't look at the video. I get out my iPad or my iPhone and treat it like a mirror in the camera app, turn the camera app into selfie mode. And then I say it looking at my own face, looking into my own eyes. And so when I do that and get dramatic, first thing it does, it makes me smile because I'm making a total clown of myself. But the second thing it does is it does exactly what you just did there. You giggled and you got all excited. That's what it does for me too. It gets me excited. It builds the excitement level really, really fast. So I'm becoming more and more a believer of not only put the feeling into it, but put the feeling into it while you're saying it into your own eyes. Because then you really can't avoid it at that point.
Yeah.
That's
really powerful.
It does. I think one of the other things that gets in the way of success with affirmations is we allow ourselves to be distracted in the middle of it. Well, when you're looking in your own eyes, there's no way to be distracted. You have one task: look into your own eyes, get excited, and talk to yourself. There can be distractions over on the side, but boy, they're going to have to be really darn good distractions to get your attention away, because you are completely focused on you doing your affirmations. So
that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff too. So let's get back to Nikolai and Elon and Steve and these guys. I don't think they really, I don't know, maybe they did do affirmations, but it does kind of make you wonder what did they do to fuel themselves? Because really that's what affirmations are all about. That's what journaling is all about. That's what meditation is all about. That's what all of these things are all about. They're all about going within and drawing upon that unlimited well of energy that is in our internal connection to source energy that we're a part of, rather than trying to steal it from the people around us and all that other kind of stuff. It's the self-generating stuff. Sure. Because that's where the real power is. So what do you sense was their secret, or is their secret in the example of Elon, because obviously he's still going, in terms of drawing on that energy? How do you imagine that they ended up doing that? Did they just kind of learn it accidentally and didn't realize what they were doing, or did they do it consciously? What do you think?
Oh no, I don't think. Okay, I think it could have started out accidentally. But I also think that when it started accidentally, they said, hey, wait, something to this. Like Edison, right? Everybody knows his story of meditating, right? Him going into a meditative state. And just in case you guys who are listening, if you're not aware, he was famous for taking his afternoon naps in order to get inspiration for a lot of the things that he invented. So he would sit in the chair. He would have his arms down beside himself. He would lay back and, kind of go into or fall asleep. And just as his hand was relaxing, he would have a metal ball. Just as the hand was relaxing, the metal ball would drop into this metal plate, make a clank, and that would jar him awake, right? But he said that was how he was able to tap into source energy in order to get the ideas for his inventions, right? And the direction for what he should be doing in terms of, facilitating and bringing about these inventions. Now, the first time he did it, right, maybe he stumbled upon it. Maybe he just fell asleep and something woke him up and he was like, oh, wow, I just had this incredible idea. Let me try that again.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So it could have happened like that, or who knows, maybe he was talking to someone who was into metaphysics, right?
Could be, sure. And metaphysics was big at that time. It was very big at that time.
Exactly. So, I mean, who knows? But the point being is once he tapped into that and realized the power that he had, that's what I'm talking about, us realizing who we are as spiritual beings, being able to use our creative mind, right? Once he tapped into that, then he learned not only how to use it, but to perfect it in order to, how many patents do we have? Like hundreds, right?
It was a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And I think the same thing for Nikola Tesla. I think the same thing for Elon. I don't know, that much about Elon's background, but however he came about understanding the power of his mind, I think that probably, like Edison, fascinated him to the point of, wait a minute, if I can do this, what else can I do? If I thought about that, is this really possible? Or maybe, how can I make that happen? And I'm a firm believer that when the universe gives you an idea, you may not even need to know, like me for Snapchat, I may not have even needed to know how it was going to happen. And that's what I was caught up on back then, the how, because I wasn't into the law of attraction and I didn't even know about it. But not getting caught up on the how. But I think, Walt, when we start moving towards making the idea happen, that's when the universe steps in and starts giving us information. Because now we're moving on it, right? And that's what I say. Don't worry about the next step. The next step will come. You just have to first start taking the first step. And I think that that's probably what happened with all of them. I don't know how they got to taking this.
Yeah.
But once they took the step, right, the universe just scooped right in there and said, okay, I got you. Let's do this. What about this? What about that? What about this? And they were like, yeah, let's do it, right?
That makes sense. I mean, I can kind of imagine an Edison discovering something like that by accident and noticing it. I think that's the big deal. He noticed it.
Yeah, to notice it.
He noticed that just at that point where he's just starting to fall asleep, that's where he got his best ideas. So he found a way to kind of tap into it without completely losing the rest of the afternoon, which was smart of him. That's what the metal ball was all about. But he figured it out and recognized that was a big deal and learned from it. And that I think is another piece of being a successful conscious creator, learning what works for us, paying attention to what happens when we're in the midst of developing our processes, or maybe trying a process that somebody explained to us, like affirmations or journaling or whatever.
Yeah.
But paying attention, and I don't just mean paying attention to our minds. I mean paying attention to our hearts, paying attention to what we're feeling inside, which for me was a big deal at first because I wasn't feeling anything inside. That was the hardest piece for me the first 5 years or so. That after I learned more than that, actually, probably the first 5 to 10 years after I first learned what the law of attraction was, I first got exposed to through The Secret in 2007, a year after the movie came out. And for the next, 8 to 10 years, something like that, up until about 4 or 5 years ago. Oh yeah. Recognizing that there was anything going on inside was a big deal for me. And I felt actually quite inferior to the rest of the human race because I seemed to be the only one who didn't feel anything. Everybody else seemed to feel something that I was talking to. So that's really just another example of learning how to notice. I finally noticed one day, I've documented it here on the podcast too. I realized that there was something I think I told you about this. I had been feeling this thing before, but I had discounted it.
Right.
Because it was so continuous. It never changed, never altered. And so I figured that must be just something in my imagination. It wasn't anything real. And I would just dismiss it. I learned not to dismiss it anymore. And now I am learning more and more how to pay attention to it. That's the key to being a successful conscious creator, is when we notice stuff, when we become aware of stuff through our development process, taking note of it, stopping and saying, oh, that's one of the keys I've been looking for. And then replicating it.
Right.
You got to replicate it. Otherwise, you just lost it, right? Otherwise, it didn't do you any good to notice it.
Right. And I think that us as human beings operating in our humanness and not operating from our spirituality, right? I think that that's part of our humanness. When we see things, to dismiss it or to left brain it away, logically. Oh, okay.
Right.
That didn't mean any. Oh, that was just a coincidence. Oh, that's crazy. Can you believe what happened? You know what I mean?
Dismiss it. Yeah.
Yeah. To dismiss it logically and not really think that it means anything. But it's something interesting that you said. You mentioned your imagination, right? And I thought to myself, when you said that, oh, that was just my imagination. And I thought Neville Goddard would tell you, well, that was God. Yeah. Your imagination is God.
And I used to dismiss my imagination. That was one of the many things that I dismissed. I thought, I didn't dismiss it entirely because I thought that I was always one who came up with very cool ideas. But I thought that was just me doing it. I didn't think of that as being creative in and of itself. Being an actual creative force. I just thought of that as, well, that's just the idea. I just got an idea and now I got to go do something with it. It never occurred to me that the idea itself was doing stuff.
Yeah. I like the way you put that.
Yeah. I really did not believe for a long time that ideas themselves did anything. I thought that ideas were useless until somebody actually did something with them.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Why do you think you thought that?
I think that came out of Christian teaching, not intentionally, but I think that's where it came from. Largely because, I could point to a lot of different ways to look at it. The way I look at it is Christianity is so often taught as God is an external being who created us, and we are under God's judgment at all times, and we are sinners, and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's the separated stuff, right?
Yes.
And that message basically told me, well, I'm not good enough to be a God. I'm not good enough to come up with any godlike stuff. So I certainly couldn't be a creator in that sense. And so I internalized it. And I believed it. And then I got sick of the whole thing and I threw it out the window, but I hadn't gotten rid of the idea yet.
Right.
I had to change that idea, and that took a long time to shift that. But shift it, I eventually did.
I think I love that I can go off the rails here. I think
You're going to figure out that there are no rails on this show.
I love it. No rails, no rails.
You think that there are rails? You ought to tune in on the Thursday show. You're filling in today for Dan Mangina and Alex King. By the way, I want to throw out a hello to both of them, especially to Alex.
Hey, guys.
She's going through some surgery today, so I'm really thinking about her today. But both of them, the two of them, when they get on this show on Thursdays is like the wild card day.
Oh.
And it usually...
I'm sorry, listeners, I'm not a wild card.
It usually manifests in terms of something on television, because Alex is really into television shows.
Oh, okay.
I guess the favorite one they like to discuss is Supernatural, which I really know very little about. They tried to turn me on to it.
I remember the show, but I never watched it.
They're huge fans of it. And so they go off on these tangents talking about Supernatural. And I'm sitting back and I'm laughing at them because they're funny as heck. I mean, these guys are just great to listen to, but they go off on in this direction talking about what happened on this obscure episode that I have no clue about. I mean, that's the extreme of what happens on the show. So I want to reassure you, you can't go far enough off the rails here. It's not possible to do. Okay? Just so you know.
Okay. So that's good. That's good. So, I think one of the ways I was able, or what kind of shifted my thinking as far as who we are as spiritual beings, right? I know I have a human form, but I really don't like to consider myself a human being, right? I like to consider myself.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that. I really do. I mean, I think of myself as a human being, but I like the mindset. That's cool.
Because for me, that keeps it in the forefront of what I'm really capable of. Just kind of like what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of people are familiar with Abraham Hicks. Now, I will be honest with you. I like Abraham Hicks, but Abraham doesn't really resonate with me.
Which is fine. Yep.
Yeah. What resonated with me was a channeler. His name is Lee Carroll, and the collective entity that he channels is called Cryon, Kryon, right? Okay. YouTube channel. He has a YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And the episode, I call it an episode, but the recording of Cryon, I think the name of the title of the video on YouTube is Stop Thinking Like a Human, right? And when I heard that, it was kind of like, I think that was Ernest Holmes, his book. Is it no. Joseph Benner. Joseph Benner? Dang it. The impersonal life. Yes. The first time I heard, I love audiobooks and I don't like to read too much, but the first, I promise I'm tying this all together. I'm coming back.
I'm sure you will.
I promise I am. The first time I heard, I really love, Brian Scott's YouTube channel. He reads a lot of books. Mm-hmm. And he read The Impersonal Life. The first time I heard it, Walt, I cried.
Wow.
I cried because it's written from the standpoint of God talking directly to you. Mm-hmm. So it's as if you would be reading God's words to you.
Right.
And I cried. So when I heard Stop Thinking Like a Human channeled through Lee Carroll, Cryon, right? That's basically what he was saying to us, speaking. It sounded like God talking to me to tell me that I'm magnificent. We are created to be amazing, right? We don't have to try to be something that we already are.
Yeah.
And so when I listened to it was so profound, and it just changed me in an instant. It instantly changed how I saw myself. And that's why I think the way I do in terms of manifestation, that nothing's off the table, right? That if we're all one with God, we have the ability to change our reality at any time. It's the reprogramming of our subconscious mind to believe that we are who we really are. is what comes into play, whether you manifest or cannot manifest. And everybody can manifest. We're always manifesting, right? People think, oh, I can't do it, but you're always manifesting, because our reality is a direct result of what we're manifesting.
We
right?
manifested all of it. Yeah. So to say you can't manifest is basically to say, I don't have anything going on anywhere in my life.
Exactly. If you're not manifesting, I hate to say it, but you're no longer on this earth.
That's right. Yeah. Well, even then they manifest. So we can't even say that.
Right. So, just for me, that was really, really eye-opening. And coming back to Elon and Nikola and Edison and all those guys, right? I think at some point they realized who they are. Even if it was only in the sphere of whatever industry that they were in, right? Ford, automotive, Edison, electronics, right? Electricity or whatever. Excuse me. Nikolai was obsessed with numbers. People thought that he was crazy. He was obsessed with the number 3. But now we know that the whole universe is based on numbers. Mm-hmm. Everything is based on numbers. Mm-hmm. We know that now, but they thought he was crazy, right? So I think that all of these guys that we're talking about on some level knew who they were as spiritual, creative beings. And, getting back to Ernest Holmes, The Creative Mind, I listened to that and I cried as well. Just because those 2 books are extremely powerful, and I recommend them to our audience or anyone who really wants to try and understand, in my opinion, who we are as spiritual beings, how God really created man to operate on this earth plane, that we have no boundaries. There are no rails, like you said. And if there are, it's only because we created them.
We created
them. We can also get rid of them as well, right?
We can uncreate them.
Yes, we can uncreate them. But I want to pose something to you before we go, right? Okay. So you talked about how do we change disbelief, right? How do we do that? This is so simple, yet it's true. Everything is a decision. You simply decide to believe it. That's it. And someone says, oh my gosh, Monique, yes, but.
Yes, but. All the yes buts come out.
Get your butt out the way, okay? That's the problem. Your butt is in the way. Butt out the way. There is no but. Just like you decide that you're going to have a hamburger for dinner, you decide, I'm just going to believe. I'm just going to believe that I can do this. Well, what if what? What if it works?
What if it works, right?
If you do it? What if you become famous? What if you become rich, right? What if that? That's the only thing you should say, what if, right? Spin it in a positive way. And I guarantee you, people's lives would change in an instant if they, one, just decided, I'm just going to believe. I'm just going to believe.
It makes a lot of sense to me, especially since that's one of my go-to things to do when I'm down. When I'm feeling down and I need to climb out and I'm having trouble climbing out, I use my usual things. I go to my list of things to do and none of them are really clicking. I just say, okay, I'm just going to start believing, and then things start to get better from that moment on.
You just decide that it's going to get better, and it gets better.
Initially, I just feel better. I mean, that's the first step of it. It just feels better within moments. It doesn't take very long.
Right. Because now you have some hope, I guess, if you want to use that word, right? That things
I think it's hope, yeah. I think it's also reinforcing conviction. It goes, I mean, it's going beyond hope to, it's trying to nail certainty down. Because that's really what that what if thing is all about. It's about, I need to have some certainty. So when you declare it, you're declaring a degree of certainty you didn't have before, and that's what feels better. So, good way to end the conversation, too, because we ran out of time. But this has been great once again. Thank you for the 3 days that you filled in this week. I know that we know now that's not really your thing, but I appreciate the fact that you did anyway, so thank you very much.
Yes, and it wasn't a struggle. I just learned a lesson that, no, this is not something I could do every day.
So now you know. That's a good thing.
Yes.
So I look forward to talking to you again next Wednesday. Thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.